Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
Star Trek Podcast.
I can understand loneliness.
Yeah. Yes. Now, Miss Smith, Your Honor, if you don't mind,
I suppose you understand it even more. I mean, having to run a huge ship like this with so much responsibility every minute and having to be so careful with all your men looking up to you.
Well, it probably appears more difficult than it is.
I read once a commander has to act like a paragon of virtue. I never met a paragon.
Neither have I.
This is my character. My character.
Is that the character you're going to do today?
I'm Reginald. I'm Reginald.
This is your beginning of the podcast character?
This is my character.
What does Reginald think about the episode that we're going to discuss today, Mudd's Women?
It was quite pleasing to me.
What would Reginald say about the fact that this is the 112th episode of the It's Got Star Trek podcast?
By Jove! No. No.
You went from Reginald to Bert.
Bert. I am Bert. No,
that's Australian.
No,
it's Australian.
No,
that's bordering on offensive.
Okay, I'd rather get on the defense here.
It's offensive there.
Yeah, I know. I need to kick it more. I was thinking about it the other day. I need to kick it a little more old school.
Offensively?
What? You need to be more offensive?
No.
You want to talk about birds? You want to talk about birds and dames? And
I just need to open my
skirts.
Tomatoes.
I just need to open my trap door a little more.
Okay, wait. Is that a medical issue or
no? Just
right.
let all the garbage flow out the trap door during the podcast,
including these characters like Reginald and Bert and some of the other characters.
I shouldn't be worried about sounding like an idiot. I should just do what's true to me.
Are you generally worried about sounding like an idiot on our podcast?
But sometimes I get in a mode where you're like, okay, well, there's certain expectations for what we're supposed to do, and then I can box myself in, and I can get the blinders on and get too focused on myself, and get too inward, and then I lost all sight of and scope and context of what it is we're doing here, which is bringing a smile to people's faces.
Okay, I just wanted to get an idea of what some of these these requirements that we're meant to fulfill.
Just make someone giggle. Just make them giggle.
Make people giggle.
Make people giggle
in the context of Star Trek.
Yeah, just make a little Trek giggle.
Chuckles.
Trek giggle. Tribble giggle.
Yep, Tribble giggle.
We are purveyors of Tribble giggles.
Tribble giggle.
Tribble giggle. Come on, you can do it.
Tribble giggle. Tribble giggles.
Tribble giggles.
How about
Charles Trip Tucker the Third?
Trip Tucker Chuckles.
Tucker Chuckles.
Tucker Chuckles.
Tucker Chuckles works too. We got Tribble giggles and Tucker Chuckles. Tucker Chuckles and Tribble giggles. Right? That's what we've decided. Okay, all right.
I'm not comfortable with 4, Captain.
Okay. That's from last week's episode of Enterprise.
Let's do this one.
Okay, yes, Mudd's Women. If it's not clear yet, this week on the 112th episode of the It's Got Star Trek podcast, we are discussing the TOS classic, as so many of them are, Mudd's Women.
Yes, and it's I mean, from the start, it's kind
I know, it's like how do we discuss this?
Yeah, it's got I know the word problematic can be overused.
Yeah,
but it's I guess you really have to take it
problematic.
I should use my I statements. I really need to take into context when it's from. But at what point should I be like, okay, it doesn't matter when it's from? Some things are a little like, eh.
I am in the box position on the side whatever, largely of it's important to take into
The
account
box position on the side.
Yeah, I'm in the box position on the side.
Okay.
That supports the idea that it is important to take the context, the temporal context, the cultural context into account. However, that does not mean that it's a blanket absolution of some of the ridiculousness that you see in past media as well as contemporary media, because you need the full context. And the fact is that there's lots of stuff like in this episode where from looking at it from modern eyes, you're just like, Jesus,
Yeah.
there's some ridiculous shit here.
I mean, even Spock like is doing there's one scene where the ladies are walking by and he's like checking out their butts, and then he like looks at the captain and gives that shrug like, when in Rome, you know.
Well,
he's like,
there's a
shot.
shot, for example. I mean, you talk about the male gaze. Everything's the male gaze in TOS to varying degrees. But we don't really see a butt shot like that. I mean, there could be some stuff on Voyager, but in Enterprise is when you start, the Enterprise is that regression in terms of sexual politics where the decision was made, we need to sex up this show, and we'll justify it by showing more penises and partially nude men. And that way we can over-sexualize both men and women, which again, from 2022, you might think, that was... That's not. I mean, you guys didn't understand the complaint.
Yeah, right. And generally speaking, okay, I'm going to make an assumption here, and this could get me into trouble.
This is good. Controversy
trouble.
sells podcast, dude.
But I think generally speaking, over-sexualizing men doesn't work the same as over-sexualizing women because men generally like
it's a patriarchal society.
They're
in the power position.
Yeah, when we hear the sexualization, it makes men feel wanted.
It's like, oh yeah, that chick's super into me. Oh yeah,
they're all into me. Oh my gosh, I'm so hot. I've got the American dream. You know, I'm the man.
I'm living the dream.
Yeah. Hey, bro. Yeah, dude. That chick wants me,
dream,
dude,
bro.
Hey, look at the tree, bro. Look at that tree, bro.
That tree's so hot. Look at that. Tree's got a hole in it.
And that's the argument you'll see sometimes online, when people say like, well, what? They sexualize the men in this video game just like they sexualize the women. And it's just like, it's not.
You did not get the memo.
Yeah. It's like, this doesn't even take a lot of nuance to know the difference. Like, yes, you can verbatim make a comparison without any context, without any sort of analysis, without any nuance, and say like, thing happened here, thing happened there, therefore thing is the same. Yes. It doesn't work like that.
It is a rationalization. Mm-hmm. It is the traditional form of rationalizing the position you wish to hold on to, as opposed to opening your mind up to new ways of thinking and changing your position as warranted and appropriate.
Yeah, all of that, and then on top of that, just how about the basic idea of like, if you spent your whole life being treated a certain way, don't you might get a little bit sick of it after a while. Yeah. Meaning, like having women can't, like a woman can't, go down the street without being leered at or something like that.
Or hooted and hollered at.
After a while, maybe it's like they just don't want to deal with. They don't want to hear that shit anymore. And so the guy is like, "Well, I would love it if people did to me." It's like, first of all.
No, you wouldn't.
Like, maybe you get a
little.
Not if it was in the exact same context.
Right.
Exactly.
Like if you actually could feel that context, you would not be happy about that.
Exactly. So
anyway, again, these are assumptions on our part, but we've read Cosmo magazine.
Yes. Yeah. This is basically it's looking at the issue in a vacuum is what they're doing. Is just as if it's isolated, independent of anything around it.
Right.
So
when I was 12, my family rented a beach house, and they had left.
When I was 12, you sounded like Wonder Years. Harry Stern.
Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern. When I got a beach house with my parents back. When I got a beach house. And Paul said to me, Dad.
I'm delighted to be in such, compared to such.
My
good
Daniel
company.
Stern could use some work.
It could.
It sounded more like a Richard Dreyfuss.
It did a little bit.
Okay.
Bob. But so I was 12, and they had in the room I was staying in, they had a Cosmopolitan magazine, and one of the articles was describing how the average. I don't know what the unit of measure of
there's inches usually, right? Inches, they measure in inches.
I was talking about male ejaculation.
Oh, okay.
I guess you can use inches.
It's in cubic centimeters.
But they were talking about the volume.
Drams.
The volume. Drams, yes. Well, the average dram of male ejaculate amounted to about 30 calories. That was what the article.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. So
There's other ways to get calories.
one of those
though.
cosmopolitan articles that was clearly written, like all the rest of them, by men.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Star Trek, where this is all a preamble to the fact that Mudd's Women is not an entirely sexist episode, I'd argue, but it is a very 60s male gaze episode that the message is a little bit unclear, and we're gonna be jumping around. We got to jump around a little bit here. I guess point number one I'll make is I understand why this is a classic episode. I enjoy it. It's a good.
Well, Mudd is such a character.
The story is a well crafted story.
Is he supposed to be? Where is he supposed to be from?
I know. Like, is he a pirate? Is he
Scottish?
kind of Irish? Is he a little bit Canadian?
He starts with that Irish accent, but he basically starts to drop it once his actual identity is revealed.
Just some sort of American swindler.
So he was doing some sort of American, perception of an Irish accent.
Yeah.
And then
It's a little bit pirate.
kind of like, Scotty's, James Doohan's version of a Scottish accent, which sounds nothing like an actual Scotsman. And then he drops that, right? But yeah, so the story is well constructed. Carmel, what's his name? Yeah, Roger C. Carmel, who is a wonderful character actor. He is a great like this character is fantastic.
Something about that toothy smile he has looks so mischievous.
He's mischievous.
It's like child. It's like, but it's childish in a way too. It's that smile. It's like childish, and like you said, sinister at the same time.
It's prankstery, but with an edge.
Yeah, an edge.
Right. He's looking out for himself,
and you can tell he's calculating when he's like, yes. It's like that John Lovett's character.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh yeah,
yeah. It's like every one of John Lovett's
Yeah.
character. Yeah, that's the ticket.
The acting is good. The story is an entertaining story, as long as you make accounts for some of the stuff in this story. Because the part of the problem I have is it's not clear to me whether this drug that the women were taking, right? So brief plot overview.
The Venus drug.
You've got Harry Mudd is transporting some women that he basically wants to sell. I guess he's not. It's not a slavery thing. It's a brokerage, right?
He's wiving
it's a brokerage.
settlers.
Yeah, he's wiving.
And what's the deal? Is they were getting old, and this was making them younger, or was it just making them prettier?
Okay, so that much I know is it's not that they were old; it's that they were homely women.
Yeah.
Now,
which is another
by the way,
issue.
that's not the word I'm using.
That's what they
That's what
said.
Childress straight up used at the end, and that ending, how that ended up, was kind of weird too.
Homely as opposed to comely.
Yes.
Comely means good. Homely, less so. But the idea is that he is making extra, fundamentally connecting minors who are lonely on a planet. And again, I'm sorry to jump around like this, but this is just like we talked a little bit about heteronormativity in last week's episode of Enterprise. It's like 10 times that here, because all the assumptions are that minors are men.
Yeah.
And minors are lonely.
Right.
And, and there's multiple minors, talked about, or factory, or whatever the implication is you're going to a planet with a bunch of lonely men. And here's the thing, that alone, you could already understand, that would be a business right there. Like, I will take women from point A where you're
in business, baby.
They're not finding mates. And in this world, women have to find men because it's a heteronormative galaxy. So you could already see him charging a fee, basically to broker these arrangements. But the plot is basically that he's making extra money with a magic pill that he found that temporarily makes women look more beautiful. All right. So sci-fi-ish concept there. Okay. What is less clear to me is, are the women affecting the men on the Enterprise? Right? Because that's what we see. They're picked up by the Enterprise, and we can talk about the opening scene in a second if you like, but they're picked up by the Enterprise, and very rapidly, all the men on the ship, except for maybe Spock and Kirk is a little bit resistant.
It's a strong reaction, and it's not like the Enterprise is like a pirate ship.
Exactly.
It's the fucking Navy, and everybody knows how to behave.
And there are women. They work with women. There are lots of women on the ship.
There's women all the time.
Well, okay. Yeah. So my question is, what I'm getting at is, the way the men react, are we meant to understand that part of the reason they're reacting the way they do is a side effect of that drug those women are taking, which is, I don't think that's what we're supposed to understand. I think we're supposed to understand that the women are so incredibly gorgeous that even these professional men are like collapsing at the knees and acting the fool.
It's enchanting. It's some kind of enchantment kind of thing.
Well, okay, McCoy says a line that's both simultaneously progressive in some sense, but also very sort of regressive.
Progressive in a white Southern doctor sense.
It's mostly regressive, but it's
a simple country doctor.
It's mostly regressive, but it's got a good message behind it. He goes, because he's talking about how beautiful they are, or what Kirk is talking about, their beauty or whatever, and McCoy's like, are they, Jim? Are they actually more lovely, pound for pound, measurement for measurement? Okay, that one right there.
Yeah.
Pound for
What
pound,
the fuck, dude?
measurement for measurement.
Women are just meat.
But then he goes,
delicious meat you get at the
Just
deli.
pounds of meat.
he goes, are they actually more lovely than any other women you've known, or is it that they just act beautiful? And so
He's like, no, strike that.
There was a little bit of progression in there in the sense that it goes hand in hand with the message at the end, where it's like it's not. And this is the only time Mudd actually seems not sympathetic, but almost likable at the end. Was at the when they were talking about when she took the pill and somehow she took the pill that turned out to be colored gelatin.
Yes,
the beauty was in
and you
her
could tell
all
because
along.
it wasn't sparkling with
It looked
magic
it looked
sparkles.
really tasty though.
Yeah, but somehow like a high level of confidence will immediately apply a ton of makeup and like put your hair all pretty and duded up like
That's
within
the weirdly progressive
It was some kind of gummy.
part of the story.
Yeah, that was right.
And the other weirdly progressive part of the story, to my mind, and again, this is all on a relative scale to the time period in 1966. What was this? October, I think, 1996 or 1966, is the fact that the women are not slaves.
October 13th.
They're not enslaved women. They make that point. They say we have, and it seems that we're supposed to believe them.
They want to find.
They
husbands.
are voluntarily looking for husbands. The places they come from are no-goes. So that's another thing, that there is some agency here, even though that agency is.
But that planet they're going to is like.
Well, we don't know. Because we never get to that planet that they were originally going to.
Oh, yeah,
right?
but the planet where they ended up is shit.
Well,
though.
I know it is a
Like,
pretty shitty planet.
Just to connect those points I was making before, where
Connect the dots.
McCoy was saying that, do they act beautiful? And I think that was another way of saying, do they have self-confidence? And at the end, when they took the pill, Kirk goes, there can only be one kind of woman.
There could only be one. That's
of
a Highlander reference.
There can only be one kind of woman.
It's
and then
a series of movies, a television show. I think comic books as well.
Kirk says there can only be one kind of woman, and Mudd, in the almost only likable moment he has in that, he says, or man for that matter, like him and Kirk are now talking together about confidence, and he says, you either believe in yourself or you don't. And so those
that's two types.
So, well, I guess you're right.
I mean,
that's a good point.
can be
No,
a
it
debate,
is. That's
you know.
right. No,
I think you've completely undermined the entire story.
yeah. So, but
James T.
But it was
Kirk.
funny, like even the presentation of it, it was still like a little regressive because McCoy's talking about pound for pound, and then the no, but I mean the gelatin, like how did that? They took the pill and suddenly that was the whole. That's an old storyline. I don't know who originated with that one. I'm thinking about the episode of The Simpsons where Lisa had these dancing shoes on, right, and they made her dance all great, and then because she's a bad dancer, and then like she did great at the recital or whatever. She danced great at the recital, and then the scientist was like, "Well, you weren't wearing the shoes all along." And then the joke is like, Homer's like, "Well, yeah, she was wearing them right here. See, they say super magic." It was a subversion of that joke, but that idea has been around for a long time. Where
It's a folktale. It's a folktale. It comes from folktales.
But this was just
like you're holding the magic stick or whatever.
This was. And the way this was this was practically just incorrect the way it was done, though, because like I said before, she took the pill, suddenly she had all this makeup applied to her face, and her hair was all permed up and stuff. And so I don't care how much self-confidence you have, how likely it is that can you take your self-confidence and transform that into a physical appearance of makeup.
How likely is it you can take a pill and it'll like fix up your hair?
Yeah, and I know it was like an analogy or whatever, or it was supposed to be like representative of the way you present yourself, but they just straight up, I mean, it's very obvious they didn't hide the fact that they changed their hair,
and also it was interesting to me that the mechanism they used to ugly up these women was just, I don't know, to smear like a little dirt on them, make their...
They put on some...
They made like a face.
Yeah, they looked tired
they didn't
and
have
sad.
makeup on.
Yeah, Ruth was the one with the dark hair. She basically what she did is
Ruth Bonaventure?
She like tensed up. Have you ever done that where you tense up the corner of your mouth and bring it back and down? You go to give that shark face.
Yeah.
She gave the shark face and she's like, yeah, look ugly, yeah. And then she was wearing that fake Halloween flesh. Have you ever had that fake Halloween flesh that like you put on your face and it looks like it's melting off your face?
No.
But well, that's what they put
One
that
time
on.
I had a fake Halloween flesh-eating virus.
Was it what?
It wasn't a real one.
How do you dress up like having a flesh-eating virus?
Well, I didn't say I was dressed up as it.
But you
I said I contracted it.
Oh, you did on Halloween?
Yeah.
Why didn't I know about this? Why didn't you tell
It's
me?
the kind of stuff you want to keep to yourself.
Well, so let's
You don't want to keep a huge
let's throw it off on the internet now.
a huge gaping abscess.
When did you have
Keep that
what
to
grade was
yourself.
this in? You brought it up, man.
The third grade.
Was your face falling off or something?
It almost completely fell off, and they had to tape it back on.
Are you fucking with me? Are you fucking with me?
I don't know how to answer that.
So
Jesse doesn't know how to get himself out of this situation.
So when Childress kept calling her ugly at the end, like
Totally called my bluff.
So when at the end, Childress goes. He keeps insulting Evie. He keeps going, "You're not only plain as a bucket, you're not even good company. What the devil happened to your looks anyway?" And he goes, "You heard what I said. You're homely. I've got enough in crystals already to buy queens by the gross." And then they come in. He's like, "I didn't touch her." And then Childress finally goes, "Does that mean the others? They really look like she does?" Like he kept like fucking. Just drilling into her head how ugly he thought she was. Now, when they were all taking the pill, like, remember when they were all turning quote unquote ugly and
taking the red pill,
and they're all taking the pill. It's not clear whether or not Evie took the pill. I guess the implication is she didn't take the pill. I don't know, because how come they were all because there was that scene when they were in the mining camp and she ran out the door and she was like, "Oh, no one will dance with me because I'm stupid and ugly," or whatever she said, you know? You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah.
Like, did she take the pill or not? Because why was everyone going after? Basically, I'm asking, was Evie supposed to be like naturally less beautiful than these other two women or something? Because when they were in the mining colony,
she was sort of presented almost as the leader of the group.
Because Magda and Ruthie, all the men wanted to dance with Magda and Ruthie, but they didn't want to dance with Evie, and Evie was all coughing at the.
She didn't want to dance.
Yeah, she didn't want to dance. So why was she all suddenly like self-conscious?
I think she was supposed to be the sort of lead one of the group because she was the one who Mudd tasked with seducing Kirk, which didn't work. Probably wouldn't have worked anyway. I mean, not in the way she thought. He might have slept with her and then been like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do what you. I'll sleep with you. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. I'm not going to let this Mudd guy go."
Well, why did Childress keep calling her ugly if she had taken the pill? I guess she hadn't taken the pill.
Yeah, because or it wore off. I mean, it's inconsistent. It's
a
unclear.
little,
The main thing is,
I think it must have been wearing off.
Yeah, and to have him, and the irony, I'm pretty sure. I do not mean to insult these actors, but I think we're supposed to understand that there is a certain ironic, hypocritical component to these particular goofy ass looking dudes, dirty, slovenly miner types, insulting women for how they look. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems ridiculous, right? That especially that Childress guy.
He was on Seinfeld.
Yeah, he was in a lot of. In fact, he was in some other Star Trek.
He was Izzy Mandelbaum Jr.
Gene Dynarski.
Yeah.
Played Ben Childress, and he played Krodak in The Mark of Gideon, but also Commander Quinteros in the TNG episode 11001001.
Yeah, that's right.
It was weird how it ended though, because now after
he was also on the Monkeys
and in All the President's Men.
After Childress proved time and time again he was being kind of an asshole the whole time. He was like, all we know of this guy is he's a piece of shit. Maybe he's not, but everything he was presented to us.
First, he's fucking up the deal with Kirk. Kirk's trying to offer him money just to buy some stuff, and he's gotten together with Mudd to be like, "Nah, we want the ladies.
Yeah,
how much for your women?"
And then he just keeps
your little girls.
And he keeps like, you know, what is it? Emotionally abusing, verbally abusing.
Definitely,
yes.
yeah.
Verbally abusing, and then at the end, Eve ends up wanting to stay with Childress. And I'm all for a redemption of characters, but the fact doesn't change that he got nicer to her and more understanding of her once she got like. Took the pill and got all her makeup on. She took the pill, her hair got duded up, got her makeup on. All of a sudden, he wants to be with her.
He's like, "Oh, she doesn't need the pill for this? I'll take her."
Well, I guess you're right.
It's kind of. I'm sure that's not.
I guess
we're not meant to interpret it that way, but it's a valid interpretation with the facts that have been presented.
But whether she was artificially made more beautiful or not, the fact remains that he liked. I guess that you could say the whole thing about what is it? how can anyone love you if you don't love yourself or something? And maybe she finally loved herself, so he loved her. But that doesn't excuse how he was being such a piece of shit to her. So does that mean every time she has moments of low self-confidence, what's going to happen? He's going to say
3 days in the future when she's like, why the fuck did I decide to stay on this fucking sand planet with these troglodytes?
And the moment she's having a bad day, he's going to be like, well, go fuck yourself, go get some confidence and pretty yourself up a bit.
Proto-incel behavior from these fellows is like, these women are not attractive enough for me.
He was talking about female cooking.
It made me think of femoids, which is another incel term. They always refer to women as femoids in order to objectify them further than they've already been objectified. Just calling them females is not sufficiently objectifying a whole group of people.
Jesse, you talk about the female cooking. The line before that, this was actually a line where it was kind of, I guess, one of the progressive moments in the episode where Eve speaks up and she goes, "Oh, the sound of male ego." You travel halfway across the galaxy and it's still the same song.
I like that.
And so that was I was like, cool. We get a little bit of something.
I also like when he was telling her to wash the dishes. She was like, "Why the fuck did you go hang him up out in the sandstorm? God damn it!"
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "Oh," and then the next scene is him kind of sheepishly hanging him up, and then after he hangs him up, he looks at them. He's like, "Huh."
Yeah. I don't know why she didn't just do that herself though. Why didn't she?
Why should she? She didn't need not. She can. Maybe that's why she decided to stay. She's like, "Oh, this guy's pretty easy to boss around."
Yeah, I mean, she did try. She said she tried to clean the dishes, but she couldn't get through all the shit on them.
In my head canon, the way this the sequel that we never see to this episode is that the three women just murder these dudes.
Yeah, it's we've had enough of these bozos.
And then they buy some of Mudd's robot people to do the mining, and then they become rich.
Yeah,
That'd be
that's
nice.
a much better way to.
It's just I agree with you, Dan, that it's difficult to be sympathetic to these fellows when we're meant to be sympathetic. And this, I think, again goes towards who's the target audience. Even in the 60s, the target audience was probably mostly young men, right? Mm-hmm. And they would understand this. I think they would understand.
They're the worst.
We're meant to understand that this behavior, particularly by Childress, is not cool behavior. This is not good guy behavior. Ricky Ricardo would not be doing this.
No, Ricky Ricardo.
He knows
he's
how.
too good to do that.
But
he still gets rewarded in the end anyway.
But the thing, exactly. The reward in this case for both of them, for both Childress and Eve, as well as the other new couples, is a heterosexual marriage. Mm-hmm. That's the reward, and it's considered a highly valuable reward, more valuable than all the things that they could do with these. They're talking about mining these crystals and stuff.
It's funny to think that this is the 23rd century.
Yeah, it is.
It's more like this is like a Western or something.
It is very Western. And I was going to say, one of the things I like about this episode, I mean, there's a lot I like about this episode, but one thing that really stands out here, this is an early season 1 episode, is the 6th one that was aired, but it was the 4th one produced, at least under the Shatner era. And it has that, Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry always talked about it being Wagon Train to the Stars, a Western set in space. Mm-hmm. And we see varying levels of that throughout the series, including overt Westerns. But here, it's not a Western in, they're not on a desert planet or whatever. It's a Western in vibe and it's not just with the miners and the wiving women and all the sort of frontier spirit. More specifically, it's that you have this Captain Kirk, who is a government authority, and he is tasked with exploring and patrolling.
He's the marshal.
Yes, he's the marshal of these lands, and he is in the process of his duties forced at times, like here, to negotiate with pirates and brigands and scammers, and he kind of has no choice. He's got to make this deal with the miners and with Mudd because of the situation with their cracked dilithium or lithium crystals.
Are we supposed to understand these as what dilithium crystals? They're basically what dilithium crystals are. They're just saying they're called lithium crystals.
It's the 4th episode they hadn't figured that shit out.
Yeah, right. That's fair enough. I'll give them that.
But that is a very Western vibe to it in
like
the storytelling.
I like
not bribery, but that having to deal, not only having to deal with these brigands, but not always winning out. Sometimes having to interface with the culture that exists in this frontier land.
I like how at the beginning,
the final frontier,
when they sort of discover this ship, the way Kirk's character is presented, he's really just kind of calm and curious. He's not.
Kirk is so awesomely always calm.
Yeah, it's awesome. He's not freaking out. He's not being like, let's do this. He's just like, what's going on here? How can
they don't got their transponder on? We gotta check that shit out. Oh, now they're in danger. We gotta save them.
Westerns,
and everybody else is like, fuck these people.
It was a Class J cargo ship. They were going to an asteroid belt with a Schiller rating of 3.5. What the fuck is a Schiller rating?
I don't know.
Maybe Schiller was the name of some production assistant or something. I don't know.
What were you saying about Westerns?
Westerns were really big. Western shows were really big in the 60s, and all these actors had done Westerns prior to doing Star Trek.
Yeah. DeForest Kelley did a lot.
Yeah, and Leonard Nimoy did some.
And Kirk was when Kirk was saying about Mudd, he says, if that captain can walk, I want him in my cabin immediately. And he said, correction, I want him there whether he can walk or not. Kirk was basically just suggesting that they break Mudd's legs at that point, which is like kind of like...
Was that what you... I wasn't sure if that was what they meant, or if they just... Because Kirk wasn't sure what their medical situation was yet, because they had just been beamed off of a ship that exploded.
The impression I got was he was a no-nonsense sheriff. No-nonsense sheriff being like, bring him in. I want to...
honestly, I hadn't considered that, but I think you're correct.
It's sort of like Westerns are sort of like establishing kind of how you do a show.
How do you do this
and
show?
Sort of like appeal to people, whereas like say maybe 15, 20 years ago it would be like some kind of like hospital drama kind of thing, or like a lawyer drama.
That's interesting.
Cop drama.
In the Western, it's such a fascinating genre, but with the Western, where you got the one person traveling around to new situations. In the hospital drama, the new situations just keep coming to them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So it's kind of similar in a way.
It's similar.
Except it's not similar. It's similar. Oh, the difference is though, is in a Western, it's usually a single person going around with new people all around him. But in the hospital drama, it's your same crew. Except a new sick person comes in to you every week.
A new sick person.
So it's
usually a whole bunch.
So it's like the role of the wandering Westerner is played by the sick person that comes in. Basically, it's like the other end of the perspective. It's like in a Western, if you're a town that the Westerner, the lone gunsman came through, that town is the hospital, and you're just
all the world is a hospital.
So all the world is different hospitals,
Dang.
and it's basically taking the perspective of one of those towns where it's like they have a new gunslinger coming through town every week. That's the hospital drama, is having a new gunslinger in town every week.
Yeah. All right, so let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back to talking about gunslingers and hospital dramas
And drams of
drams of cum,
human ejaculate.
Oh boy,
we'll be right back. All right, we're back.
Do you remember on Quantum Leap at the beginning of the episode when whenever Scott Bakula would figure out what was gone, he'd go, "Oh boy."
That's right. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yes, I do vaguely remember that.
You know what was funny about this episode? Like you got it more in the beginning, is that sort of like sex music they play. That sounds like the 20th century, like jazzy sex
and
music.
it was like really, it was super horn heavy. It was like a really horn heavy.
Really horny.
There were two key moments where they played it a few times.
Whoa, two key, as in the key of.
Which key
horn?
was it in? Which key was it in?
The key of horniness.
Was it a
it's
G major?
It's in a horny key.
Was it a D minor?
It's
more
I don't know, but they better
get it D minor. He gives D wives to D minors.
Yeah, right. I hope they have their G string handy.
Oh, is that a guitar joke?
Because the G string you put up your butt.
Yes, but it's also a string on a guitar, correct?
That's true.
Yes.
That's where the joke comes from.
A violin.
What about a harpsichord? Does a harpsichord have a G string?
Yes.
Yes.
Probably got a few of them.
Probably got a few.
Maybe piano does as well.
Piano definitely has.
Oh, they got a bunch.
They
of
perhaps
Gs.
like 7 or 8, right?
Yeah. New podcast. It's got the insides of
that's
instruments.
A whole other podcast.
All right.
A whole nother podcast.
I have my note. Under my notes here, I have like key points, and the very top it just says, "This shit is so silly."
Yeah,
because it is.
It really is.
Again, it's a fun story when you make allowances for the time period and forget about some of the it's hard. It's the reason why I'm fumbling is it's very difficult to forget about, like the butt shots and the focus on beauty and how sexily clad these women are.
Okay.
Which is funny because in TNG, you see a couple things in TNG, but it's very different. It's much different in the 80s compared to here.
Okay, so the first shot we see of these women, that is a silly scene because it's a
you're,
weird.
You're going to talk about the situation with the green which one was the one wearing the green dress? That was
a Ruthie.
Ruth
with the dark hair.
Ruth Bonaventure.
So, what I was going to say
because there was something I noticed about the entrance of Ruth Bonaventure.
Okay, well,
it was really ridiculous.
Well,
I've never seen it before in Star Trek ever.
Okay, I was going to mention that just so the way it was composed, the shots were composed. So when it came up, first they're all posed, right? This person on the side view on the left, she's front view, hip focus, like front view with her hip, focus on the hip. On the right,
that was the lead one.
Yeah, that was the other one facing the. That was Magda was facing the other way. It was basically two shots of women on their hip. On one, it was like she was front facing forward with the hip. The other was the side hip. And in the back, you have Ruth facing her butt towards you.
Facing the wrong way. That's what I was
facing
going to talk
the wrong way.
about. Whenever we ever seen people beam in facing the wrong way.
Right.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Yeah, she's facing the back of the transporter pod, and then she does that whole turning around to look back.
She's slowly turning seductively,
look all sexy backwards.
Yeah, right. And they look like just department store mannequins, basically.
Yeah. Or the backup singers for a 60s band.
Oh yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it took me a minute to get that.
It took a weirdly long time for that.
You had to put those words together.
I had to
60s band.
I had to access that memory because it was
if you're watching Laugh-In.
Took me a minute to figure out what was going on.
Yeah,
my
the background singers on
Sonny and Cher,
Laugh-In or whatever.
Too many simultaneous processes running.
Simultaneous.
Simulacrum.
Wait,
one of those women was in Playboy.
Yeah, that was
Susan Denberg.
Yeah, she was a German-born Austrian.
Are you talking about Magda?
Magda.
Apparently, Magda is a Polish name, so I don't know if she was supposed to be.
The actress is German. It's described as German-born Austrian, and I'm wondering if it's the situation like my mother. My mother was born in Austria, but with a German passport due to a little fella named Hitler.
Yeah. Right.
Oh boy.
And the Anschluss.
Oh boy.
On the Anschluss.
So
a German-born Austrian chorus dancer and 1966 Playboy Playmate. So she was a Playboy Playmate the year this show aired.
So some people were probably like,
this show aired in October. There's a good chance that people watching this show would have already if you're a 12-year-old boy watching this show and you see her on the screen and you think, oh my gosh, I remember when I was looking in my dad's study in that pile of magazines I'm not supposed to look at
drawer.
In that drawer under the hi-fi record player.
Do you think our friend D-Dog has that, whose dad had all the Playboys? Do you think
100%
had that 100%?
D-Dog. He had Playboys going back as far as I think they went.
Yeah, that guy was fairly old.
He had a good collection.
So the rest of that scene, the way the shots were made up was kind of weird because it has that scene, right? That opening one. Then it cuts to the officers just completely leering at all of them and playing that violin music that's like, but then it cuts back to the women. This time they're all in a row facing forward. Suddenly, so they went from two facing forward, one facing back, separated by a few feet. Now they're next to each other, all facing forward. And it cuts back to the dirty officers, and then cuts a third time back to the women, and they're back to how they were standing in the first image when they were transported in. They were back.
I hope they fired the continuity intern.
Yeah, because then on the fourth time they warped over off the pads again to stand side by side like they were in the second shot. Only this time.
But in this case, you don't mean warp as in a mode of travel in Star Trek. You mean warp a la Super Mario Brothers.
Yes, through a warp pipe.
Yes,
you're supposed to be mesmerized by their beauty,
but
so
not notice these production errors.
So on the fourth shot, it goes back to them like they were in the second shot. Only this time the camera is angled off to the side instead of head on. So I was wondering for a second. It was so in my face about it for a second. I was wondering, is this some kind of stylistic choice they made to make it like you just said, Jesse, where we're just so mesmerized by these women, they're just warping around the room, being hot in different positions,
Yeah. You're not supposed to pay attention to those.
Put them wherever.
It's like a Kubrick movie.
The kids won't notice. Just put them wherever. Just point the camera at the butts and the boobs. Point the camera at the butts and the boobs, and the kids won't notice a goddamn thing.
Did you notice that after all that happened, Kirk calls in, he's like, Bruce, the transporter room, how many did we get off?
Yes, I know. I laughed out loud at that.
Yeah. And Scott was like, for and all, sir.
I'm a child, but yes.
I don't think they said that back then. I think they said.
Oh, I bet they did. They said all sorts of things back then. They were dirty. They were dirty people back then. They were into all sorts of crazy business.
Said
there was all sorts of effing and jeffing going on back in the 60s.
They were even worse than today.
I think so. And
then, when they were walking out of the room, that's when McCoy just said, "Amen to that, Scotty."
Because they said the N-word all the time. Not on Star Trek. No. Oh my God, no.
Just but people in general.
People in general.
White people.
When they left the room, McCoy was all like looking at their butts, and he said, "Amen to that, Scotty," which was super like fucking like male centric kind of like.
McCoy wanted to have sex with those women from behind.
Yeah, it's not even, and Scott. It would have been bad if Scott
Southern style.
It would have been bad enough if Scotty was like, "Oh, they're hot. They're super hot. I think they're hot," and he was like,
"Hi, laddie."
Yeah,
there was that dude that was in sick bay, and he was like, "Are you finished?" When like made a face at him.
If Scotty had been like, "Oh, they're really hot," and then McCoy said, "Amen to that, Scotty," it would have been bad, but it would have followed better. But nobody said anything. He just said, "Amen to that," meaning he was just responding to the image of their butts walking away, which is kind of weird.
That's in the checklist. You have one of those crosshatch checklists. So on one side you have progressive, and on the other side you have regressive. This would be one of those marks, one of those tally marks, one of those many tally marks on the regressive side.
Spock was a little out of character in this episode. There was one point where Spock was announcing Mudd's presence. He was like, "The commander of the transport ship to see you, Captain." If you listen back to that, it seems like he gave some weird British accent or something. Like he was purposefully
sometimes he has a little funny way he speaks.
He was putting on an
"Oi, governor!"
He was putting on
"Oi, governor!"
It was like he was putting on an. It was like Spock was putting on an affectation to imitate, Mudd's, to make it sound like he was making fun of the way Mudd talked or something.
Yeah, okay. I kind of saw. Yeah.
And then Spock.
I'm an Irish. I'm an American Irishman.
And then, of course, when they walk by, and Spock, I mentioned this earlier, when he looks at the button. And he looked at Kirk and smiled and was all creepy and was kind of like, "Hey."
All the dudes are pretty creepy. In fact, Kirk does pretty well in the end, because Kirk is kind of looking at them, but he's not leering at them the way McCoy and others are. Sulu is funny in this because Sulu's all kind of smiling and like trying to help his friend, saying like, "Come on, man." There's even a brief, like, you can barely, they're talking over each other. We're meant to focus on what I think Kirk and Spock are saying, but you hear Sulu kind of goading, what's that guy's name? Who is
Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, Mr. Farrell. He was like, "Come on, man, get your
Rigel
shit."
12, Mr. Farrell.
He was basically like quietly under his breath. He's like, "Get your shit together, man. Get your shit. We gotta do our shit. Do our job. Do our shit." That's what kids say, right?
I think the first time that Kirk was all tempted wasn't until late in the episode when him and Eve were in the same room together, and he was like saying, "I hope you don't mind." He's like, "As a matter of fact, Miss McCurran, I do." And she was like, "I was trying to take a walk."
He seemed quite annoyed that she had just showed up in his room.
Yeah, but then and then she said,
"Those chicks are always just showing up in his quarters."
And then she said,
"What's with the Starfleet security? Come on, this is a perennial problem. It goes into the fucking 24th century and the 32nd century. They always got this problem with the security."
But when she was complaining, basically saying all the men were looking at me, following me with their eyes, and then that's the first time.
So I'll go into a room with a man.
Yeah, well, that's the first
into his bedroom.
That's the first and only time Kirk gets tempted. He doesn't feel it at all leading up to there, and then after that he kind of shakes it off and starts getting pissed off at his staff, basically, because they can't do their jobs. So Kirk is like only gonna fall in love.
That's the only order I'm gonna give it twice, gentlemen.
Yes, I know. Right.
Kirk is only gonna fall in love on his terms, basically.
And it's not even about let's leave this whole falling in love.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're right. There's no love about it. Okay, he's only gonna lust on his terms.
To play devil's advocate, if I were Mr. Farrell, or one of the other crew members, and Kirk was like, "Come on, I'm handling this fine. Why can't you guys handle this?" If I were Mr. Farrell, I'd be like, "Yo, Kirk, come on. We know your deal. You could afford to pass up these opportunities." Mr. Farrell did not look like he could afford passing up many of these opportunities.
Oh yeah, guy.
He looked a bit twitchy.
Yeah, because that guy's in other episodes and he has weird problems.
Yeah, I like that character.
Yeah, totally.
But he's a twitchy character.
He's one of those,
He's almost like a
extra
proto
dudes.
Barkley or something.
Yeah.
Like competent, but a little squirrely in some fashion.
That whole scene where they were doing where they're interrogating Mudd. First of all, I don't know how it works.
That hearing scene?
Yeah, the hearing. I don't know how hearings work in the military, but it doesn't seem like it's a very...
They sort of work against you.
Yeah, because having a hearing on the ship with no disinterested party seems like it wouldn't be that fair.
But that's a tradition that goes back a long time with regard to the ship's captains having authority to adjudicate situations, because traditionally
they can do marriages and stuff.
If you're 6 months from home jurisdiction, and you have to resolve a dispute, granted, the disputes would not usually be about fellows smuggling artificially enhanced women. It would be about murder or theft or something like that. You'd need a way to resolve that. And in Star Trek, following the Western theme and the naval theme, because it's not just the Westerns, it's also Horatio Hornblower in space, right? The kind of, the independent crew going around the Pacific Ocean.
Master and Commander.
Yeah, and Master and Commander.
Russell Crowe?
Yeah, yes. But what the character's name is, I forget.
Yeah, I forget his name too.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't matter.
That's at play here too. TOS, that's played up big time. Later Star Trek, we don't see that as much. Even in Enterprise, when Enterprise is supposed to be sort of similar, but Enterprise is more like early expeditions, whereas TOS is like East India Company style, controlling territory, but also exploring it, because you don't know, you've claimed a territory, but you don't know what it all is. That's the same as the West, right? Mm-hmm. The U.S. with the West, we claimed the West, but we didn't explore all of it until after we claimed it. And same thing with the oceans.
I still don't know what the hell's out there.
Well, you should go check it out. Check out the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that'd be better.
That place is fucking awesome.
So they had this.
If you like moss and rain, and I do.
I like moss. Well,
it's not much rain. It's like a little rain.
I like
it's
cannabis.
Just all the time. And if you like cannabis, moss, and rain, if you like green things, go to Oregon or Washington State, the correct parts of them. Don't go to the incorrect parts of the state.
Right. The deserty parts.
Yeah.
So this whole hearing thing, they had this computer machine that wasn't a lie detector test.
Negative.
They specifically said it only detects things on record, so it's just a computer. It's that didn't make any sense.
Okay, it was. I just chalked this up to 1960s people having that they're on the cusp of great knowledge, but they don't quite comprehend it.
Yeah, right.
Because it was clearly a lie detector. And I know what they said, but I'm just saying. I'm saying from what we've observed. Forget about what they said. Right, we can ignore that because of what we observe is that it operates as both a lie detector.
Okay, so
and has access to the database.
Just for the record, Ruth says if it can read our minds too,
it can't do that.
And Mudd says it can't, darling. It's just it can't. It's just what's on the record. That's all it is.
And I'm making multiple points in one here. Point number one is we don't have to fucking pay attention to that because it clearly doesn't make sense. It literally doesn't make sense from what they showed us.
No, it doesn't.
Scene.
Why do you have a little display with a sine wave with a light, like looking like it's doing some kind of analysis or something?
And shit. it was calling him out on things that it could not have in the records. At the same time, it was not calling him out on things that were ambiguous. Right. So there was a couple questions it asked where it did not say negative or whatever because the question was not something a computer could know. It wasn't a test of a lie or not, right? It wasn't something that was easily testable. So we don't need to worry about it because clearly they've showed us it was a lie detector.
I mean, okay, no,
and we also who the fuck cares what Harcourt Fenton Mudd says because he's a fucking scammer and he lies to these women constantly anyway.
I hear what you're saying, and it's a very reasonable position. But like that's one of those lines that they just didn't even have to include. They were specifically making a point by saying that line.
I think it would be a more problematic line if Kirk or Spock or Scotty had said that.
But I don't. Why even have?
If Harcourt Fenton Mudd is saying that to the woman who he's already lied to repeatedly because he's manipulating them, that line being incongruent with the facts we've been presented doesn't really bother me so much.
Okay, well,
I can tell it's physically affected you.
I respect the place you're coming from. I'm having a hard time coming to grips with it,
and that's
because I don't know if I quite agree.
You know what I always say? I always say infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
You always say that. I get fucking sick of it.
I miss your fucking Vulcan.
My wife the other day was like, if you say that one more fucking goddamn time.
Remember we were hanging out the other day?
He says sensors.
Remember what? Yeah, he does. He just does that. He does that to push buttons.
Just to push.
Remember when you said that though the other day? And I was like, motherfucker, you say that all the time. Stop fucking saying that. And you got really sheepish.
I did get sheepish.
Yeah.
Oh,
Speaking of sheep, if you like sheep, go to Oregon, and there are lots of sheep out there.
Yes.
Do sheepy things with them.
Lamb.
Okay. All right. You want to elaborate on that?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, we. I was looking up.
Dan's gonna give one of those sheep one of these beauty pills.
Well, oh no,
that's the most beautiful sheep I've
beautiful sheep I've ever seen. Apparently, the polygraph test was invented in 1921. Just in case.
Yeah, and it's bullshit, dude. It doesn't work.
Well, yeah, so I was wondering if in this...
does not detect lies.
All kinds of shit they came up with in the 20s.
So I was wondering in the future...
Phrenology.
Why didn't they have it advertised as a polygraph test on Star Trek? Because it takes place in the future...
people would assume it at that point. I think it was something that you would see on cop procedural shows.
Maybe in the future they don't
negative.
Maybe in the future it's not
in the future.
In the polygraph, maybe it's in the future.
Maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
This show was in 1966. That's the past.
But maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
maybe in the future. What I was trying to say is maybe they don't use polygraph tests because they're bullshit. Maybe they finally come enlightened on. Maybe
they use something else.
Gene Roddenberry was like, polygraph tests are bullshit, and I'm going to make a point to say that in the future they don't use polygraphs because they're bullshit. And Gene Roddenberry knew that,
even though they do.
Not in this future.
Yeah, but they do.
But
maybe in the future.
You're asserting that it was a polygraph, and I'm saying it wasn't.
It caught Harcourt Fenton Mudd lying.
How do you know it's a polygraph? Maybe it has different methods of detecting lies than the polygraph.
I guess it could have scanned his DNA.
It has actual scientific.
Then why wouldn't the computer just be like, actually, no, this guy's lying. His name is Harcourt Fenton Mudd. It didn't say that.
Yeah, it did.
No, it didn't.
It said,
no, they had to get that out of him, and then they looked up Harcourt Fenton Mudd. That's what happened, right? Kirk is all like, what's your, blah, 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 state your name for the record.
Leo Walsh.
He states his name, Leo Walsh. And then the computer's like, negative. And then he's like, okay, give us your real name.
Oh, you're saying it would have given him his real name. Okay.
Right?
I messed up.
Right?
But
so
it did
call slightly more Irish
But it did call him out for giving the wrong name.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying is it called him out in when he was overtly lying.
Maybe
like for example, when he said, I've dedicated my life to this. It was like, negative.
I was just saying maybe in the future they don't use the...
And that's not on the record.
In the future.
Maybe they don't...
Well, I guess it could be in the records.
They don't use the mechanisms in place for polygraph. They have a different mechanism. What they are, we don't know yet because it's not 200 years from now. Maybe they've come up with a better method for
What I will
it.
say is that I think it's excellent that this narrow point has given us a good 20 minutes of podcast
Are you saying
time.
It's impossible to invent a lie detector test that works?
It's a thought generator.
Of course I'm not saying that.
Okay. As long as you're not saying that.
I did not even know that was a question that we were discussing.
we were talking about maybe it's not a polygraph, it's something else, and you were like, what? Like, it looks at the DNA or something? Looks at the DNA or something? What?
It uses actual scientific stuff.
Dan's out of context theater.
The police record, he was it said
he was 240 pounds.
Yeah, 6'1".
God damn, dude.
Harcourt Fenton Mudd. It says sentence psychiatric treatment effectiveness disputed, but it said future police record code X731248.
Did it say future police?
It said fucking future police.
I did not catch that.
Yes, it did. I paused it and I wrote it all down.
Shit.
And it said,
well, it's the future.
But what the fuck is yeah, I know.
The future.
Is this some kind of joke that the staff had?
They didn't expect people to be able to see that on their 13-inch black and white TV screen.
And when it gave his vital statistics, it said brown hair and eyes. It would not list it like that. Right. It would have said hair brown, eyes brown. Yeah. It's not like, oh, they're the same color, so we're going to change the whole format of the ID for this one person.
You think in the future they don't have dynamic form elements?
No, why would you?
Why not?
Because it's much quicker and more expedient.
I mean, I gotta to be fair, I'm 100% with you. I'm just I'm playing Mudd's advocate.
I think there's no reason to do it that way, and the only thing it does is complicate things. Because if you're someone who's checking those IDs for a living, you want everything to be as standardized as possible, just for ease, even if it's only slightly.
You gotta standardize it.
It's just even if
standardize it today.
And someone might say, "Oh, well, it's not that much harder to look at it if it's slightly different." It's like, no, it's not. But every little bit counts, and you want everying to be
every
as
little
predictable
bit
as possible.
Counts.
Do you think double jack is a real form of solitaire?
I was wondering about that.
Did she just make that up like Kirk made up that other game in that other episode?
Do you think that round cards are obnoxious or cool?
I think they're cool, but they're also like kind of impractical.
I think they would upset my desire to align things.
You'd be better off with triangular cards.
So according,
I don't know. I think triangular cards might drive me mad, but they would be easier to point upright because I think that's the problem I have with cards.
You need corners.
So I want to organize them all so they look nice, and if they're round, I would spend all the time like constantly adjusting the cards to line up properly.
Yeah, that would be true.
Apparently, a double jack isn't just a burger. It's a declaration of delicious. 2 juicy 100% beef patties with American cheese, fresh sliced tomatoes, hand lettuce, and something else.
Hand lettuce?
Yes, but from where?
What'd you say, hand lettuce?
It says hand leaf lettuce. Sorry, hand leaf lettuce.
Hand leaf lettuce?
From
I don't
where?
know. I guess they rip it themselves.
What is this? What
From
restaurant
Jack in the
is
Box.
this?
It's Jack in the Box, yeah. But apparently,
Who the hell has a Jack in the Box by their house?
Well, people on the West Coast.
man, Jack in the Box, I'm not.
No, I went there once and it was.
You know the
I
fuck?
was not impressed.
No, I had a burger there and I took a bite and I was like, oh, this
Did
is
a roach fly out of it?
No, I took a bite and I was like, oh, this isn't as terrible as people said it was. But then within seconds, there was this like aftertaste. I was like, ugh, this is really gross.
Yeah.
But then apparently I had 2 separate independent sources tell me that their tacos are good. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
I could buy it.
My dad.
I could too,
when
I
he-
guess,
when he
if
was
I had
in,
money.
When he was in Hawaii visiting my sister, he went to like Jack in the Box for breakfast, and he was fucking raving about it. But
Man,
Sometimes-
my dad likes a lot of fast food.
What you
Sometimes
want
bre-
is-
sometimes breakfast is a different deal.
You
Yeah,
want,
it is.
It is.
It is
It's like a
totally,
whole
yeah.
different company.
Yeah.
But you know, it's good. Whataburger is a good.
Whataburger?
Whataburger.
Whataburger?
Whataburger.
Whataburger?
It was
What-
Whataburger.
Whataburger?
No, it's
What is-
Whataburger.
Whataburger.
What is size?
No,
is
it's Whataburger.
What? Burger.
It's Whataburger.
Water.
It's
Water.
Whataburger.
Are you saying
Waterburger.
Waterburger?
Waterburger.
According to Memory Alpha, Double Jack was a single-player card game similar to Earth Game Solitaire.
Oh,
So no, to answer your question, it's not real.
It's not real. So it's like Fizbin.
Yeah,
But
that's what it's called.
no, it's not it's not
says-
quite like Fizbin because Fizbin is wholly made up and
Right.
Fizbin
was made up on
what's
the
this game
spot.
called? Double Hammer.
It says it says
Double
in
hammer.
Memory Alpha, Eve McCurron played this game in 2266
McHuron.
after preparing
She's like from the Scottish tribes from Lake Huron.
after preparing a meal for Ben Childress while on Rigel 12. Well, am I pronouncing it wrong? McHuron? Is that wrong?
No, I'm commenting on
I
the
have no
name
idea.
McHuron, which I've never heard before.
I thought you were shitting
I
on
don't know
me.
if that's a real name or if they made that up.
I thought you were shitting. I thought you were
if they
pissed-
made it up, it just to me it's kind of like the Muk is kind of a Scottish
McHuron.
vibe, and then the Huron is
That's a Native American.
I swear, I
Like the
thought you were.
Native
I thought
American
you were. I
tribe
thought you were
and Native
pissing.
Canadian
I
tribe.
thought you were pissing in my mouth, man.
Why do you always think I'm pissing in your mouth?
It seems like I don't know, man.
I'm not
maybe
always pissing
Maybe
in your
this is
mouth.
more of a problem with myself than with you. At
If
this
you
point.
don't love yourself, how do you expect others to love you?
and not piss in your mouth.
Unless you consent and ask for that.
or the piss in your mouth because that's what you love.
I believe the youth call that water sports.
Oh yeah, the last thing that computer would indicate that's a polygraph. It was able to detect the horniness in all the men in the
Yes.
room. And
Oh yeah, that's right. The computer's like, all the men are horny. Blood is flowing to the penises.
Yeah, and Kirk was
erections
It was
imminent.
gonna keep going, and he
and-
was like, "No, that's enough."
Yeah, and Kirk was all smooth. He's like, strike that from the record, Spock. We don't need that shit
strike it from the
on record.
record.
Yeah, we don't need the computer mentioning the fact that
From
we
the
all
log.
got hard dicks because of the ladies, the alien ladies
They
who
were-
showed up.
Captain's log.
They weren't Saturnius harem girls though.
No, they were not.
They
And
were not Orions.
They were not Orion, green Orion women either.
Saturnius.
Women.
What is Saturn? Is it from Saturn?
Yes, as
There's
opposed to Venusian.
Nobody lives in fucking Saturn, dude.
Yeah.
Venusian.
Venetian.
Venusian. Isn't it? It's Venusian. From Venus is Venusian.
Venice is.
Well, here's the thing. It shouldn't be Venusian, right? What it should be, if we were following the pattern of all the other planet names, it would have been something that derived from Venus, whether it was a person or something. Do you know what it'd be called? Venereal.
Yeah,
Venereal.
right. Venereal. Yeah.
That's the appropriate way to. They had to come up with a different. Venusian was something those clever astronomers came up with because they're like, oh, people wouldn't like it if we discover, aliens on Venus, and we'll have to call them venereal.
Did you know?
aliens.
Did you know it's like
Venereal rocks.
It's like sexagon. Is that like sexagon or sexagon?
As opposed to a hexagon?
Yeah.
As opposed to a fuctozoid.
Incidentally, a Xanthocylus saturnius is a Mediterranean seed bug. A xantho. Do you think the xantho
sea bug? That's gross.
Do you think xanthocylus is like the same shit as like xanthan gum?
Yes, and with that, I think that's a perfect stopping point. We'll take another quick break, and we'll be right back to close down the show.
Odds and ends.
Be right back. All right, we're back. Okay, so any final major points about Mudd's women? This particularly interesting episode.
Mudd is one of those characters. He's like this outrageous con man character, and he's totally. You can use him in all sorts of settings. Like we said, this is very westerny. You can use him in a crime story, a fantasy story. He's possibly one of the few Star Trek characters that you could put in Star Wars.
Yeah, he's
and he's such a character that you already know he's shady as soon as you meet him.
And he's that rascally shady.
And he's so rascally, and he always ends up if somebody like Kirk or like I guess the Discovery people aren't involved, then he always ends up getting away at the end. They end up like sort of bringing him into custody.
Gets caught, and then they escapes catch him off screen,
and they give him away to somebody else, and he always ends up like squirreling away from.
That was in some ways that's a way around. That's a lot of shows use this as a way around a general prohibition that television shows had during this time period. A prohibition against anybody committing a crime and getting away with it, or committing an infraction and getting away with it. There had to be some sort of comeuppance. If it was a minor infraction, the comeuppance could be minor, but in the case of actually breaking laws and things like that, for example, Dragnet was famous for this. They had episodes of Dragnet where the story made more sense and was more gripping and interesting if the person appeared to get away, but they always had that closing thing on Dragnet, so they could just say at the end, they're like, but 6 months later, the police caught up to him and he was put in jail for 10 years. Because it was this generalized,
police always win.
This unspoken, well, I was about to say unspoken, but I think it was not even that unspoken. I think it was just an agreement that we're like, okay, well, we won't put anything on TV where a bad person does not get punished. But
because of the police unions?
No, I think it was just a cultural vibe. There was like TV should only show, but that can make for some really boring stories.
Well, a lot of movies would do that too, where you'd have this sort of like super bad dude like getting away with it, and as a comment on sort of our structure in our the world we live in, and how
many people get away with stuff.
How many people get away with stuff, but then at the end, some vigilante father comes and shoots the guy, and so he ends up dying anyways.
Or like Dragnet, it's just a text. It might just be the text on the screen. Right. That says, oh, by the way, and he got caught later. But you get around that. I mean, like they do with Mudd here. They do in a couple episodes of TOS, and of course the TAS episodes.
Mudd's on a couple of TOS,
and he's in a few Discovery.
He's the only guy in TOS. Is in like
other than Mark, I think Mark Leonard. Mark Leonard is in 2 playing the. Well, he plays
different characters. He's the Mudd is the only repeat character.
Mudd is either the only repeat. There's I could be wrong, but it could be that Sarek shows up one other time in TOS. But it also could be how you interpret it. But
this is the first time we see Mudd, right?
This is the first time we see Mudd. Mudd's women, and then the later one is I Mudd.
Did you?
Is I Mudd? Yeah.
Did you notice that
robots?
Also on his ID? So he had this earring, this crazy earring on his left ear the whole time.
Ball earring.
Yeah, and on the ID, it was on the right ear, and I'm wondering if they just put it on the wrong ear, or if it was like one of those things where they did the reverso mirror image by accident, or how
maybe he is bisexual.
Well, that's funny because it used to be a thing.
I know.
In the 80s and 90s.
We grew up in the period where it was like, if you have an earring on your right ear.
That's how
left
you know
ear.
if you're gay.
Your left ear.
No, right ear was gay. Left ear was straight.
I thought left ear shows how much it matters.
First of all, please, everyone understand, we know this is silly and ridiculous, but this is how things were. And secondly, this may have caused you some issues growing up.
I swear, I think left ear.
There were the people that had both.
Both is okay.
Was cool. Both was cool.
But I think
Elton John had both.
Left ear meant you were gay.
Okay, first of all, we're arguing over
It meant you were gay. It meant you were gay. Get it right.
Not that there's anything wrong with
We're arguing over something that is, of course, patently silly.
Yeah.
I will maintain that culturally, I grew up
We're just
understanding that the right earring was an indicator that you're gay. You grew up with it believing the indicator to be the left ear. This is puzzling because we both grew up in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the same time period and with the same age.
He's from the other side of the lake.
But the thing with the two earrings meant you could it didn't matter what you were because you could kick people's asses.
Yeah, exactly.
If you had two earrings, it meant no matter what you looked like, you were going to kick people's asses.
Right. And to reiterate, we're just reciting we're just reciting history here.
This is not real.
Because that shit hurts a lot.
I mean, it's real that people believe that.
Yes, these are cultural tropes of times gone by.
I like when speaking of like the male
long gone,
like the sort of the male centric view, Mudd was saying about the pill. He says what it does is it gives you more of whatever you have. With men, it makes them more muscular. Women, rounder. And then men more aggressive.
Rounder.
Men more aggressive. Women more feminine. So what? Men are more aggressive, but women are more womanly. Like it's just such a weird.
It's the typical old, and unfortunately, many people still buy into these socialized tropes about how what defines femininity and masculinity, and who has access to femininity and masculinity based on which genitals they happen to have.
Let's not watch this ever again.
That's it. I like the story. I do enjoy it. I enjoy watching it.
No, it's great. He's a good.
I mean, I will again. You know, I have to admit, I like looking at the ladies. I feel bad about it. But the costumes are kind of gorgeous. The women were beautiful. I thought it was funny because I thought the women were beautiful in both their quote unquote beautiful and ugly forms.
Well,
their quote unquote ugly forms. I'm like that woman still looks pretty
makeup.
beautiful. Yeah, it still looks pretty beautiful to me.
TOS is always a feast for the eyes and all of its color. And
oh my gosh,
crazy.
that fucking cave, that mine cave they were in, for some reason had like purple lighting on the walls. Purple. And then even the desert outside that was all supposed to be dull red is this bright, like beautiful red. And you notice that door they opened?
Okay. You mean the big styrofoam door? The styrofoam
it was
wall?
Supposed to be they made a wall. They made a door out of the thick cave wall.
Yes.
Why didn't they just use...
Because of the Flintstones. Because people understand a rock door.
Right.
Because of the Flintstones.
Because they had these modular unit type things. They could have just used the metal and put them on those as doors.
I did. Look at the unit on that.
By the way, I like that, what's it called? The matte
painting?
Matte painting. I always love those matte paintings and how it looks so barren and desolate with these three like...
That guy Matt was busy back then.
Yeah, so
there's three like dwellings. So
the dwelling. So why couldn't they use part of the same metal they used for the dwelling as a door for the cave instead of like cutting a giant, make a weird cave door?
Because it's easier if you've got a big giant styrofoam wall to just cut out the door and just put some hinges.
One of those was the common area, I believe, because there was three of them and you were looking out of one of them. So there was like the other two guys' house and like a third building for like our fourth building for.
But we didn't actually see the inside of that. We just saw the inside of the cave.
There was something where they all met up. Was that just in the cave?
I thought it was the cave. Maybe it was maybe you're right. Maybe it was. I don't fucking. It
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. But you could see in the styrofoam where like the molds were joined, because every once in a while you'd see this line down the center that you could tell that there was either a crack where they put them together, or there was some kind of mold that was the edge of or something.
It's like when you watch sitcoms or even Star Trek from the 60s. 80s, 90s, whatever. Occasionally somebody would like close a door real firm and the whole wall would wiggle. Saved by the Bell or Empty Nest or whatever. They'd slam a door to be like blah, blah, blah.
So when they transported down to the planet, and you saw the scene with the sand whipping by, it was very obvious they just had fans on either side.
Yes.
And sand was like
sand fans.
Sand fans. They were just because they weren't going in one direction, they were all just kind of fluffing lightly towards the center, and in the middle they were all like poofing up because there wasn't enough force behind them. So, and then later
Hey boss, should we get a third fan to make a more organic wind pattern?
Nah, forget about it.
Well, later on the sand
just show the women's butts and boobs.
Later on
they won't care about the sand patterns.
The sand patterns. Later on, the sand just looked like snow. It kind of looked like whipping snow later on in that episode.
Hey, boss, we've run out of sand. What are we going to do?
Just get some snow from next door.
They're next door. They're doing a Christmas special. They borrow some of the snow.
Bob Hope is filming. Just get some of his snow. He's Bob Hope. He's not going to miss a little snow.
Yeah, or Andy Williams, maybe.
Oh yeah, don't mess with Andy Williams.
I was thinking about how the technobabble is a Star Trek thing, and in TOS, really the only technobabble in this episode was one part.
There wasn't much.
There was one where Spock says infrared reading, check traverse was it Traverse or Traverse? It was
Traverse.
Traverse.
Well,
Okay.
Sally
let me-
sells a seashells by the
well, I
seashore.
couldn't. It's hard to. The way the word is put in a sentence, it's hard to figure out how you pronounce
How
it.
now, brown cow?
Because he says check Traverse 3. Is it Traverse 3? Is that a noun? Check an adjective. Anyway, he goes infrared reading. Check Traverse 3 grid 040. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything.
And the whole thing with like McCoy and like the chick comes to visit him and
His machine's like
the machine
blipping.
goes like bleep bleep.
Oh, yeah.
and he's like, and all he says is like,
He's like, it's not supposed
what
to do
makes
that.
it do that? If it was any other Star Trek show, there would be at least an effort to like work some techno babble into like trying to explain like
He's just
well,
like, walk back again. It's not supposed to do that.
The tachyon stream.
These two lights are just lighting up.
Well, that's funny, yeah, because their medical reader is essentially made up of 2 light bulbs.
Well,
Yeah.
no. You see, the thing was, what I liked about that scene was he's looking at the readings, and then after he considers them for a moment, he flips a switch and turns it off. And then when she walks by it, it's just like these 2 lights just light up.
And that's supposed to mean something.
I know.
But-
It's like, what does that mean?
But it's almost like they referenced it later on because McCoy and Kirk were having conversation.
They were
about,
having a bro down, ho down.
They were having. Well, Ruth, I think it was Ruth. She came in. Instantly,
Ruth, not Davenport. Ruth Bonaventure.
So when they would do the close up of their facing,
that means like good adventure or something.
When they
have a good venture.
Good
when
adventures.
when they zoomed in on the women's face, they did that thing where the camera looks smudgy and foggy. I guess
Vaseline or
Yeah.
silk stockings across the
And
lens will produce that.
And so the question is what could that medical scanner be indicating? Well, McCoy says to Kirk, he's like,
Nobody knows.
He goes, an alien smart enough to pull this could also keep my medical scanner from going beep. And Kirk is going, I don't follow you. And McCoy's
I love that line.
And
He's like, I don't either.
I don't either. He's like, they're making a joke
I
about,
know, it's like-
about the fact that the medical scanner is inscrutable. Like, nobody knows what that fucking thing's
What
for.
kind of doctor is he?
Like, we never find out what that fucking shit means.
And to me, that line reading is so brilliant. It's like they would be more intelligent. They'd be clever enough to not make my medical scanner go beep,
Yeah.
beep.
Isn't there...
Sometimes cucumbers taste better pickled.
What is that? What is that sketch comedy show? It's like a machine that goes beep. Is that
That's Monty Python.
Yeah.
I see you have a machine that goes beep.
Bing. Oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, the whatever
It's a
the
sign of a good doctor's office.
but then Spock talking about Traverse 3, 4, 5, whatever, and then
Traverse?
and then the is it Traverse or Traverse? And then we gives the Schiller rating for the asteroid, but those are all the technobabble. It wasn't bad. It's like, what do they mean? It doesn't matter.
And
Who
there's
cares?
also they talk about the lithium crystals and which I think counts as technobabble and the problems there. But
It's proto. Yeah, they're getting their game on.
Yeah, we understand. It's like, okay, there's a mechanical,
I was thinking.
mechanical issue.
I was thinking about a night in sick bay. So they needed 6. We find out that they need 6 lithium crystals total, right?
Yeah.
And in the plasma injectors, they needed they couldn't run on 3. And in this one, when they were
We're talking about the Enterprise episode last week.
yeah, the Enterprise episode,
They're supposed to have like 5 plasma injectors.
yeah, but how many can they? Yeah, they're supposed to have 5. They can run
They
on.
had 4.
You can run on 4.
can, and-
because you know what happens when you run out
don't
of
want it to
when
get the
you're going
3.
when you're during warp. You don't want to have that shit happen.
Yeah.
And Captain, I don't feel comfortable. We need pie.
Tucker Chuckles.
But so
Tucker Chuckles.
So what?
Tribble Giggles.
The
Tribble
parallel
Giggles.
there is that it doesn't work on 3. Now they had to go to battery power. It's fucked up when you're on a starship and you have to go to battery power. That's a fucking scary situation.
man.
But like
They got them C
when they got down
batteries.
to when they got down to 3 lithium crystals, that's when they had to go to battery power. Just like an Enterprise. Warp breaks on 3 plasma injectors, and you could have a total of 6. I wonder. I've been meaning to find out, and one of these days I'm going to find out how many plasma injectors could they hold in that Enterprise episode, because they needed 5
in the NX-01.
But I bet it was 6. I bet it was 6.
Well, it's also a matter of how many can you have installed versus how many can you store in the cargo
Well, I'm talking about
bag.
installed. I'm talking about installed.
I got you. I just wanted to clarify.
And I bet 6.
I just don't want to get
How
the
many-
angry. I don't want to get
well,
the angry clarifying emails.
How many did they have on the D?
on the D.
These nuts.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Because that's one where there's actually like a written technical manual, and you can look that shit
These
up.
nuts in your mouth.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
canon?
we should look that up.
Is that canon?
Yeah.
It would be ice.
They couldn't rig it. So how are they getting by? Like, it was like fuses were blowing out every time a crystal blew. They had all these bypass circuits, and eventually they ran out of bypass circuits.
Bypass like a Christmas tree.
We blew the whole converter assembly. Was that a good Scotty accent?
No, it was good enough. I'm not meaning to insult you. It's just that
I asked the question.
I love Jimmy Doohan. I love Scotty. However, as I grew older and listened to actual people from Scotland in media and in personal life, interacting with them, I retroactively became offended on their behalf.
Yeah,
because Scotty's Scottish accent is equivalent to the Dick Van Dyke British accent in Mary Poppins, which is much discussed in England.
Well, what about the Kevin Costner one in Prince of Thieves?
That's no accent.
That's an attempted accent from the first
did
half.
He did the right thing.
And the next
he
half.
did the right thing to not try too hard.
Yeah.
And while it's not entirely accurate, I know you get some people out there who are going to be like, well, actually, Kevin Costner's accent would have been closer to the British accent of that time because the non-rhotic British accent did not develop until after American independence, and that is correct. However, it still would not have been as clearly an American accent. It would have been a rhotic British accent as opposed to a non-rhotic British accent. If you're lost at this stage, just look it up: rhotic versus non-rhotic English accents.
Well, I asked you what you thought, and you gave an honest opinion, and so I apprate that.
Kevin Costner sucks, man.
There was a cool shot when it was a shot of Eve holding the pill, and she was like talking about how it was a cheat and all this shit, and she was all stressed out, and then it cut to Spock holding the lithium crystal.
Yeah,
and then
he's all talking about how beautiful
it was, even though it was all fucked up and broken. He was like,
"That's
beautiful."
What Spock
that
said.
was some deep
shit.
shit.
Spock was holding it. He was like, even when they're all fucked up, even when they're all fucked up, they're beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
These sound like odds and ends. Are we into odds and ends already?
I thought we were doing.
I thought that was.
I guess
ever since the break.
I haven't stated
this
it
whole
outright. I haven't
segment
stated it
since
outright.
the break.
Are you wearing some unusual kind of perfume or something radioactive, my dear?
It's radioactive.
That's what McCoy said to Ruth.
I thought it was cool that and this isn't odd and end. I thought it was cool that when Kirk was basically talking to McCoy, what's the deal? And the conversation, I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically like McCoy was like, "What do you think is like some? You're asking if it's like some sort of alien illusion or some shit?" We referenced that earlier, but that's the first part of that conversation. And considering how early this is in Star Trek, I just wanted to note that even in this fourth episode produced, sixth episode aired, they're already banding about the concept of alien illusions. And again, from folklore, except in folklore, it would have been fairy illusions or angelic illusions or demonic illusions. Now in the world of Star Trek, we're transposing that conceit of like the what do you call them? The ones that sing on the rocks, the sirens. Where they can project an illusion of attractiveness.
Oh yeah, that's when McCoy was
closer,
talking.
They look like monsters.
That was when McCoy said an alien smart enough to pull this could also keep my medical scanner from going beep.
Precisely.
And then there was also near when McCoy was like, "Are they more lovely pound for pound, measurement for measurement?"
Another thing that is important to note in terms of Star Trek lore is McCoy early on when they're doing the whole transporting the people over from the ship thing, McCoy says, "I never did trust this thing in the first place," right? Which I don't know if it's the first reference by McCoy. It may be if you're talking, again, this was the fourth episode produced, sixth episode aired, so it might come down to which rubric you take. But McCoy has a canonical fear of the transporter, a dislike of the transporter. And it was interesting to see it stated overtly so early on. This is not something they developed later. This was an early McCoy attribute that they had.
It's the real McCoy.
It is the real McCoy.
Do you notice in that hearing thing, that machine that was and wasn't a polygraph test at the same time? At one point, Spock was getting information from it, and he was like pushing keys around and like ka-chunking things on it like it was a typewriter. It was like,
that's what they had.
That's what they had back then.
They didn't have computers back then. They had typewriters.
So that's how computers worked. You chunked things around.
I like Kirk's quote. He said, 3 unusual females. Females.
You would think Uhura at some point would have like told all those dudes to chill the fuck out. Like they never approached that at all. None of the women on the ship were like, "Guys, stop being such an asshole."
And okay, one thing I did want to discuss, I guess it counts as an odd and end, was hypothetically, if we were to do this same episode over but with modern sensibilities, what would some of the changes be? I think one of the changes would be very clearly that the attraction to the women if that was retained, the attraction to the women would not be limited to the male crew members. It would be more variable. For example, you'd probably have some male crew members who were less interested in these women. You would have female crew members that were more interested in them. Furthermore, I think if they told the story, it wouldn't be 3 women. It would be some combination of women and men.
Yeah. I think that we're still in a place where it's easy for people to digest the idea of women being attracted to other women, but men being attracted to other men. We've made a lot of progress in that, but I still don't know that.
But we'd be doing it. Star Trek would be doing it.
It's hard to say because
I think I can say that with confidence because on Star Trek Discovery, we regularly see Hugh and Stamets kiss each other.
Yeah,
right. And whether people are uncomfortable with that,
and those are people from the 23rd century.
And I guess the closest they came to that was in TNG with Riker with that
the androgynous
species that what it turned out is there were male and female members, but they kind of merged.
In the classic episode,
his was supposed to be female leaning, but then you were saying that originally.
Well, the character, I should say, was intended to be female leaning in the context of being attracted to Riker. Jonathan Frakes wanted them to hire a male actor to do it. The studio refused. That episode, which we will discuss at some point in the future, no doubt, because it's an interesting one to discuss, is a good example of they went in with presumably good intentions when they made that episode, but when you look at it from a retroactive perspective, there are a lot of problems with that episode that are not progressive. It's trying to be progressive and kind of falters, right? This episode, you could argue, is similar. In some ways, they're trying to be progressive, and it falters because so much of it is focused on the assumption, the conceit that men, when they see beautiful women, turn into fucking morons and can't do their professional jobs properly. And I will give them credit, though. Another show or another conceit of this era might have had the men sexually assaulting these women. That doesn't happen here, right? The men are portrayed, and I think this
doesn't happen on Star Trek, man.
Yeah, not as often in the same way. And I think the idea here where they think they're being progressive, and at the time you could argue they were being progressive, but with modern eyes we discount the progressiveness justifiably, is they're saying, see, look, we made the men look weak. We made the women look like they're in control. The problem, of course, is that the women being in control is a direct function of how beautiful they are.
Right.
So that is not progressive.
Yeah.
However, it is good that they did not have the men, sort of being like, fuck her. They didn't have anybody corner them. They leered at them.
There wasn't they weren't like whistling or going like,
this was not a pleasant atmosphere for these women to be walking around in. But if we did this show, I think a modern version of this exact story, it wouldn't just be women, it would be women and men, and there would be a lot more combinations of attraction.
They Might Be Giant song.
Exactly like They Might Be Giant song, which is a very good song. About the women and men.
You're like, it's not a great song. It's a very good song.
No, it is. It could be a great song.
They'd probably do 4 of them instead of 3.
Well, I think Mortal Kombat is a very good game. I think Donkey Kong is the greatest game of all time. Donkey Kong sucks. You suck. Ruthie comes from a pelagic planet. Magda comes from a helium experimental station, and Eve comes from a farm planet.
Yeah.
Fuck all that shit.
Was it Magda was like from the sea planet or something?
Yeah, which is the pelagic planet.
Yeah.
I'll take planet Earth any day.
I liked
for $500.
blast that tin plated plot.
Say what now? Say who?
Mudd at one point, I think he's referring to Kirk, says, blast that tin-plated pot. Blast that tin-plated pot. Blast that tin-plated pot.
Blast that tin-plated pot.
Tribble Giggles, Tucker Chuckles.
Whoa, that fucked me up.
I hope we've provided them in this episode.
About the vessel, it had a registration beam. Now,
the nuclear vessels.
His Class J cargo ship, Mudd's ship. They were talking about how they were able to.
Class J stands for jabroni.
Yeah. Well, they were talking about like how the ship has a registration beam. Now this makes sense. It's very common for ships to have some sort of way to identify.
They mean they're transponder.
But like, why would they be a beam? Wouldn't they be some kind of registration field or a signature?
Yeah,
like
it's
it wouldn't be a directed
signal.
beam. It wouldn't be a beam.
It's a fucking transponder. They were getting ahead of. They were getting too big for their britches. It's a classic example of sci-fi. Imagining the future and trying to think what's going to be the same, what's going to be different.
And they're zapping them out.
What's going to be the same? Oh, men are going to go weak at the knees around beautiful women. What's going to be different? Instead of transponder codes, which everyone in the fucking 60s knew about, is a fucking normal thing to have on boats and airplanes. Transponder codes, we still use them today. We will use them in the future. On the Expanse, they use them in the future. Yeah. And in Star Trek, in later Star Trek, they kind of go back to fundamentally what's a transponder code. But here, I think they were trying to come up with something cool because it's a beam, it's an identification beam.
I wanted to know, thinking of identification
I wanted to know
when their shit was heating up when they used the deflector screen at the beginning.
Deflector screen.
After you just had a problem saying tin plated pot.
Yes, we're laughing at each other. We are providing Tribble Giggles and Tucker Chuckles. Chuckles and Tribble Giggles.
Did you notice that plastic blinking red triangle next to, I think it was next to Sulu, when their engine was heating up? Like, I guess there was some kind of
that's
kind of beeping.
That normally shows like the red alert status or whatever. That's the light that lights up for red alert. But in this case, it lit up to be like shit ain't right.
There was a stardate incongruity. The episode began on stardate 1329.8. Then later on, it was 1329.1.
Man, fuck that shit.
And then it was 1329.2. So it began on 0.8 and then went to 0.1. It should have been 1328.8, then 1329.1.
Did these motherfuckers travel back in time?
That's what it seems like.
Fuck. Ridiculous.
It's fucked up.
We don't need to talk
Unwatchable. Unwatchable.
All right. Finishes that conversation.
Let us never watch it again.
We don't need to worry about that anymore. Okay, so next week.
That's got to be it.
Next week.
Next week.
Gotta wait till next week, though. Gotta wait till next week.
Next week. We by pure coincidence, we decided we're going to do some the animated series, and the next in line for us as we move forward through the first season of the annual. Jesus, the animated series. It just so happens that the next two episodes are Mudd's Passion and the Terratin incident. Okay, so we're going to do another Mudd episode.
That's another Mudd.
Sheer coincidence. This was not planned and on purpose. You can neither blame us for it nor give us credit.
It just sort of worked out.
It sort of worked out that way. Mudd's Passion, that's TAS, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 10. And we are also doing Season 1, Episode 11, the Terratin incident. So,
next week,
look forward to that. In the meantime, you can find us all over the internet.
All over the internet.
We spooge all over the place there on the internet.
Drams and trams.
Twitter at It's Got Star Trek. Instagram.
Don't put a dram in your pram.
Instagram. In this context, that's disgusting.
Well, it was the result of a dram put that creature in the pram.
Fair point.
That'll put you in prison, dude.
Okay, so at It's Got Star Trek on Twitter, at It's Got Star Trek on Instagram. Just search for It's Got Star Trek on Facebook and YouTube and Reddit, whatever the fuck you want to do. And if you want to write to us, feedback at itsgotstartrek.com. And speaking of itsgotstartrek.com, check out the website.
Nobody was doing that.
Check out the website. It's very convenient for those of you who are not interested in just going along with whatever we're watching each week since we bounce around the universe. If you want to look at our coverage of very specific shows, the website lets you sort by all the shows or general topics, movies, etc. So if you're just all about want to hear some more of our TOS opinions, boom, go there, click on TOS, and it'll list all of our episode numbers, and you can play the episodes right there on the website if you want. I mean, what are you worried about?
What are you worried about?
What even more do you want from us, man? We just did like a bunch of shit for you.
It's just Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay.
It's good quality content.
In the meantime, do it, Dan. You're gonna sing the in the meantime.
In the meantime,
we do hope you have a lovely and pleasant week.
In the meantime,
until next week.
In the meantime,
that's been Star Trek. Isn't that what did we say? I think one episode.
It's been Star Trek.
It has
in
been
the
Star Trek.
meantime,
we
had Star Trek.
It was like a number of episodes ago. I remember it was like
totally
6 months ago. I was like, you know what we should end every episode with? That's been Star Trek.
That was Star Trek.
This was Star Trek. It has been Star Trek. It has been Star Trek. Okay. That's enough of that. Goodbye.
You got it. You got Star Trek.
What are they, Bones? You mean, are they alien illusions? That sort of thing? I asked you first. No. An alien smart enough to pull this would be smart enough to keep my medical scanner from going bleep.